Hello, welcome to Flood Recurrence Interval Lab Worksheet. What you need for this lab is Excel and some colored pencils, specifically a red, blue, and green colored pencil. If you don't have red, blue, and green specifically, I'm okay with like pink, purple, and a golden yellow, but um, you know, need some colored pencils. 3 different colors. If you don't have colored pencils, you can go buy some or borrow some. Anyway, in this lab, you get to consider the scenario. You have been hired by the NFIP National Flood Insurance Program, a division of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to establish the area that would be most affected by a flood that has a probability of occurring once every 10, 100, and 500 years in a portion of Washington County, Idaho, near the city of Weiser. At the end of the project, NFIP wants a map that delineates land that would be inundated by floods of these magnitudes. Buildings located within these areas will then be required to purchase flood insurance, which will be more expensive based on the likelihood of the area being flooded. Before you can start making a map, there is quite a bit of work to do. The magnitude of a flood is usually reported in discharge and gauge height. Discharge is a measurement of how much, i.e., the volume of water that is flowing past a certain location in a stream in a given amount of time. We often hear this number reported in cubic feet per second, CFS, or also cubic meters per second, CMS. There's also like gallons per second, acre feet per year. It just depends on the scale and the type of units people are familiar with. But in this case, we are just looking at cubic feet per second, CFS. This is exactly how many cubic feet of water are flowing past a given point in 1 second. Gauge height, or stage, is a measurement that uses a fixed stream gauge to measure how high above the bottom of the channel the surface of the water is at any given time. So, is the stream 3 feet high? That would be the stage. Perhaps in this particular area, at some times it is 4 feet high, and that would be another stage measurement or gauge height. To figure out what magnitude of flood we can statistically expect in a set interval of time, we need to investigate the annual peak flow, which may be a flood. This is the largest flow measurement recorded during a single year. The data below is an excerpt from a continuous data set spanning 57 years. For each year, its rank out of 57 is included right here. And it goes on to the next page. You will need to solve for the recurrence interval, Ri, with the equation Ri equals n plus 1 divided by S, where n is the total number of years in record, which is 57, and S is the rank, which is in this column. So use this equation to solve for your recurrence interval Ri, and then you type that in or write it in, depending what you're doing. Once you have your Ri values calculated, plot gauge on the y-axis and recurrence interval on the x-axis in Excel. So plot gauge, which is in this column, and it's in feet. Gauge on the y-axis, which is the vertical axis, the one that goes up and down. And then you're going to plot recurrence interval on the x-axis, which is what you calculated in this column here. And the x-axis is the horizontal axis, the one that goes left and right. So when you make your graph, you're going to use linear scales and also a semi-log scale with a logarithmic scale on the x-axis and a linear scale on the y-axis. Semi-log plot. And you'll see why linear scale might not be the best scale to use and why semi-log scale is often used in recurrence intervals. And so here's some steps on how to graph data in Excel. If you don't know how to use Excel, this will just help you a little bit, but you might need to search online for help for your specific version of Excel. If you do know how to graph in Excel, great. Good job. Way to go. Pat yourself on the back. This part should be pretty easy for you then. And then after you graph this, there's the equation that you'll need to use to answer these questions here. Then these questions you use to make a flood map. So here we go. To complete the assignment given to you by NFIP, print the topographic map provided. That map looks like this. It is not the most beautiful map in the world, but it's the map that we're using. It is difficult, I'm aware of it, but try your best to make a really good flood map. Benchmark that's mentioned in the lab assignment is right here. And this is where the gauge height has been measured, and it's based on a 2150 feet above sea level. Yeah. Beware that some numbers here, like this 2117 is a road number. This 2105 is a road number. They're slightly more black. 2103. But these slightly brownish numbers here, this 2110 is the feet above mean sea level for that topographic line. And so as the Weezer River floods, it'll just fill up the valley like a bathtub, and the different rings along the bathtub are the topographic lines. So you figure out what ring or what topographic line the water will fill up to for each flood recurrence interval, the 10, 100, and 500. And you'll color that in with your different colored pencils. And you will scan and submit this completed flood map to the discussion board. You'll also submit your graphs up here to the discussion board. But all these other questions, you'll submit your answers in the lab quiz. So that's all the advice I have for you at the moment. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to email me. And again, if you get frustrated with the map, the topographic map, just take a break, chill out, and try your best. It is tough. These topo lines are really close together. Ugh. But here's the discussion board rubric for the flood recurrence intervals. And so see here, you get full points for your map if it's completed and coloring is neat and the coloring is reasonably accurate. Okay? If it's really messy and definitely not correct, you get 50%. And if you don't do it at all, you get 0%. So that's what you're aiming for. You're aiming for the coloring of your flood map to be neat and reasonably accurate. So you don't need to get out your magnifying glass unless you're really blind, but just be reasonably accurate in drawing your flood map and you'll get full points. So with that, good luck, have fun if you can, learn some stuff about flood recurrence intervals, and also about how flood recurrence intervals are calculated and plotted and then applied in a specific area. That's it.